Semifinals is almost here, so I wanted to talk a little bit about what we can expect and who we should be watching at the first weekend of semis. So I am going to start by talking a little bit more about semifinals overall and some of the changes this year, but if you want predictions and you just care about that, go to this time here. Yeah, go there. But talking about some of the other housekeeping things about semifinals, one of the biggest is something we just found out, and that is CrossFit will not be streaming all of the semifinals events. So Brian Spin of Barbell Spin posted an article saying that not all the events will be live streamed. So the ones that aren't being live streamed is individual events 1 and 3 and team event 3. And part of the reason this is happening is because it is going to be on a separate competition floor. But I have to be honest, some of these events were pretty exciting. I mean, all of them, there's only so many events, right? So I think we're excited to see all the athletes at all the events. But individual event 3 is Linda, the semifinals version of Linda. And we had regionals Linda back a few years ago, and now we have semifinals Linda, and I think that was something people were really excited to see come back again. And now it's not going to be live streamed. So CrossFit says there's going to be a highlight of it, and I'm hoping that'll be uploaded independently as well as shown during the broadcast, because those broadcasts get very, very long. And if it is just put in the broadcast, I think some people may miss it and not happen to be watching at the moment that's being shown. So I really hope they upload it independently as well. But that one isn't going to be broadcast, and neither is event 1, which is the 3,000 meter echo bike, hand over pull, 2,000 meter assault air runner, hand over pull, 1,000 meter skier, hand over pull. And I think everyone was really interested to see what these hand over pulls are and if it's going to be as long as it is programmed for, which is 30 minutes, and it doesn't sound that long on paper. So I think there was a lot of questions about that event, and now we're not gonna get to see it. So that's a little bit of a bummer, and I just hope they upload it independently in a video so it's easy for everyone to find events or tests 1 and test 3 for the individuals, and test 3 for the teams, which is the relay event, which is sprinting, dumbbell bench press, pistol squats, handstand pirouettes. Handstand pirouettes, again, that's something else that a lot of people were interested to see. And we are gonna see it from the individuals in live action, but not from the teams this year. But if you are there at the event, I believe you'll be able to watch these on that second competition floor without any issues. So that'll be something and worth going to see if you're lucky enough to be at the North America East or any of the other semifinals, but this weekend, North America East and Africa. Also, speaking of Africa going this weekend, Asia, Africa, and South America, their events are responsible for live streaming, so CrossFit is not doing that. I'm not sure what we're gonna get from them or what it's going to look like. It likely won't be as expansive as CrossFit's broadcasts are going to be, which is a little bit disappointing that we won't be able to see those in the same way, but hopefully those events do get some live streams up or maybe some highlights so we can see something from those events. But in the past, those smaller events on their own have not put up the type of media that we're used to getting from CrossFit. Another thing that's going to be interesting this year is to see the reduced number of semifinals and the increase in the athletes at the semifinals. At North America East and West, Europe, we're going to have 60 individual athletes for both the men and the women. That is a lot of people. But I think it will be interesting to see these athletes against one another so early in the season, so many of the good ones, because they're not at spread out semifinals or spread out regionals. When the regionals were smaller, we had more of them. So it should be interesting. I also think it will be more cost effective for CrossFit. They're running less events, and they will likely get more people to each of these semifinals because there are less of them. Like if you're a fan of 1 or 2 athletes, so you wouldn't be interested in X semifinal, you'd only go to Y. Now all those athletes are at the same one. So more people are going to be going to these less semifinals. I hope that's going to bring in some money, benefit CrossFit, and mean that they're not operating these events at as much of a loss. I know in the past, these events have sort of been a loss for CrossFit. They don't really make money off of them between how much money it costs to put them on, to put on the broadcasts. But hopefully the fact that there's less of them will help. And the fact that there are more athletes at each of them to bring in more eyes should hopefully help. But it also brings into question, what are these going to look like? Are they going to be 10 event heats like we're used to? Or are the heats going to expand? And if there are only 10 athletes in the heat, you're going to have many people in those heats be very safe from the cut line likely at the end of the weekend. So when you're watching that last heat of the last event, it is very possible that every single athlete, if it's a 10-person heat, could qualify. So does that change the dynamic of it? I don't know. And does it make it more difficult for the athletes that are, right under the cut line? They may not be in the heat with the athletes they need to race to actually get to the games because they're likely to be in the heat before if they're 10 people heats. Like there will definitely be athletes that are fighting for spots in the heat prior if it's 10 people heats. But it might not be, right? It might be 15, it might be 20, so that might not be as big of a question, but it's a question I have right now that I haven't seen a lot about just yet. So now let's move on to predictions. And we're gonna start with the North America East women, and I'm gonna put them all up on the screen for you. And most of them are in no particular order except for the podium. I will put a top 3 and the rest, no particular order. Let's get to it. So, first place, I have Mal O'Brien. Why? Because she won her semifinal last year. She seems to be the heir apparent for the throne for the first place position at the games this coming year. So her last in-person competition, she, won semifinals. And then she came in second at the games. And the person who beat her at the games is not going to be at this semifinal and is not competing at all. Congrats to Tia-Clair Toomey on her baby. She just had that the other day, so awesome for her. It's a little girl, congratulations. Back to the athletes that are competing. I have Emma Lawson in second. She came out at the games and was incredibly impressive. She was impressive at her semifinal, although it was the Atlas Games and was a less strong field. She did fantastic there. Then she did fantastic at the games. She did well at Rogue. So I am anticipating another great performance from Emma Lawson. And in third, I have Brooke Wells. Brooke Wells has done great coming back from her injury. I think she exceeded everybody's expectations last year at the games. And she still trains at PREViEWiNG, working with Tia now, who's been, a supporter and a coach for her. And you do have to have a question in your mind. Is she maybe not improving the same way she was prior because she's not working out against Tia? But then she has Tia in her corner, possibly cheering her on, possibly trying to be like, hey, you're still here from PREViEWiNG. You should go win the games. I'm going to give you my secrets and try to help you win the games this year because I can't. So we could see something really incredible out of Brooke this year, possibly. We shall see. I'm going to put her on the podium in North America East, which is an insanely stacked field. So moving on to the other women, no particular order. Danielle Brandon, she's done well last couple of years. I anticipate she's going to do well again this year. Annika Greer, this would be her first year qualifying. She would be a rookie, but I think we're going to see some good things from her. She's working at Training Think Tank now, has moved to Miami to work out at Peak 360. So I think she has a lot of good pieces around her, and I'm hopeful to see her make it to her first CrossFit Games. Emma Carey, she's on the comeback. She had this injury last year. She wasn't quite as dominant at Wodapalooza as I thought we were going to see her, but she still did really well. Still coming back from that injury, working with Brute. So I think even though she wasn't as impressive at Wodapalooza as I thought she was going to be, she is still good enough to get to the games. She's very focused, and it's been 5 months since Wodapalooza, and she's young and recovering. So she could be in a totally different place than she was 5 months ago. Alexis Raptis, she made the top 10 at the games last year in her first appearance, and I've been watching her over at Training Think Tank. I think she definitely has what it takes to make it back. Paige Powers came out with an incredible showing at Wodapalooza this year. I think she shocked everybody. So I anticipate seeing her back at the games after that. And I think that she's one of those athletes, still very young, still coming into her own. We haven't seen her at her best yet. So I'm actually really excited to see how she does this weekend. Maybe she can push for a podium spot too. Caroline Prevost, name that's been at the games so much, can't count her out. Amanda Barnhart, always perennial games athlete, expect her back. And Paige Semenza to round out the 11 women that would be going from North America East. Some names I think we should keep an eye on that could make it into those top 11. First, I have Sydney Wells. She's Brooke's twin sister. I believe they're identical, although I'm not 100% sure. If they are, though, they have the same DNA. If they're fraternal, they have very similar DNA and would likely have a similar ceiling and ability long term. So now that she's training and very focused, I think that Sydney Wells has a shot in this expanded field of possibly pushing for a game spot. Then I have Shelby Neal. She's fairly young and has been close in the past. She was 7th at her semifinal last year, and I believe it was the legless rope climb workout that really kept her out of it. So I think she's someone to keep an eye on. Lexi Neal, also young, 20 years old, competed as a teen. She's likely not her best yet either, so I think we could see some stuff from her this year or in years to come. Fee Sagafi, she's made the games once and has been close a lot since. A huge string of 7th place finishes for her. And maybe this is her year to get back. She's moved down to work with the Brutes in Florida, so maybe she has everything in order to possibly make a push to have a repeat appearance at the games. And Ashley Wozni, she competed as a team at the games. She's competed as a teen at the games as well. So has some experience working with Training Think Tank now. Think we could see something from her this year as well. Moving on to the men. And in first place, again, I have a top 3 and then everyone else, no particular order. First place, I have Roman Krenikov. I have become a huge Roman fan after seeing him finally make it to the games last year. He's now at Mayhem. He gets to do a semifinal here in the United States. I think that he's just getting better. I remember watching him with the Buttery Bros in a video they put out recently, and he looks fantastic, focused, very focused on just putting in the work. So I think we're going to continue to see some really good stuff from him, and I have high hopes that he can win this semifinal. We'll see. Fingers crossed. I like him. That's kind of a biased opinion, but I think he's putting in the work, and I do like him as a human too. Second, I have Jeff Adler. I think he's been impressive over the last few years and at semis in the past. So I think he can be on the podium again this year, even in this stacked field. And in third, I have Saxon Panchik. I think that he's working hard down in Proven. And I kind of wanted to have someone from the United States on the podium for the North American men. And Roman is not American, he's from Russia. And Jeff is from Canada, so I figured we'd give us some US representation, and I decided Saxon was probably our best bet for that in this field. Going on to the rest of the field, Samuel Cornwallier. Rich has always said he is super fit. I trust Rich. We haven't seen a lot of him as an individual recently because he went team last year, but he won on the teams. So I think you gotta consider Sam a threat, and possibly a threat for the podium. Tyler Christoffel, he's been to the games before and also has been very close these past few years. I think that he's going to make the jump back into the games field. He's over at Mayhem working with some really impressive athletes, so I think he's got a good shot of making it back. Then we have some names of men that I just think are sort of staples who have made it quite a few times to the games, and I think they're going to be able to continue to make it to the games. That's Alex Caron, Alex Viennoyer, Dallin Pepper, Jason Hopper. Then I have Will Morad, who is older, working with Proven. I just don't know how to count him out. He's made some incredible runs to the games at semis. He's had some really awesome performances where he wasn't in a qualifying position before the last event and then blows the last event out of the park, or this year there'll be tests, blows the last test out of the park. So I can't count him out. I feel like he's a home run hitter and he knows when he needs to hit that home run and he does it. So Will Morad, going to the 2023 CrossFit Games. Then I have Noah Olson, potentially his last year as an individual. It'll be sad to see him go if that's the case. This would be his 10th consecutive CrossFit Games. I believe he can make it back, and I'm excited to see him back and hope he has a really great year. And if this is his last individual appearance, I hope it's a great way to go out. And lastly, and I believe the only rookie I would have at the games out of this field is Jake Berman. I think he has a shot of making it. On to some men that I think have a chance, but are going to end up just outside of the top 12. It is 12 for the men, by the way. Jack Farlow, he was at Rogue, was able to compete there. He trains with Emma Lawson, that's his girlfriend, and she is incredibly fit. I have her on the podium on the women's side, so I think that's a fantastic person for him to be training with. So we could see him push to the top 12. He's also very young and has likely a future ahead of him where he is at the games if it's not this year. And that's kind of the name of the game for all three men I have here. I have James Sprague also on the outside looking in. He is a fantastic human. I interviewed him at the games last year when he was in the demo team. He was so friendly. I know he works really hard. I sort of hope he ends up in the top 12. I just feel like he's going to also be on the outside looking in, but I kind of hope I'm wrong. And lastly, Nate Ackerman. He's also very, very young. I don't know if he's quite made the jump enough to make it to the games. I know he was there as a teen. I don't know if he's quite ready for games individual, but at the very least, I put him on this list because I think he's someone we should be looking at long term. On to the teams, and I think we could potentially have the team that wins the games in this field here, but there could be some other teams that push them. They're not here, I don't think, though. I think that there's going to be one team that is just far ahead of the other teams, and I think there are 4 teams that are going to be ahead of the rest of the pack as well. Although the teams on the North America East side, stacked. This is one of the strongest team semifinals we have, if not the strongest, out of all the semifinals. There are more than 10 teams here that could beat other teams that'll make it to the games, for sure. So this is a super stacked field, although, like I said, I think there's a little bit of a separation. I think there's one team that's gonna be the best, 3 teams after them that'll all be fighting for the podium, and then I think there's a drop-off. So let me put this up on the screen so you can get a look at them. So I think the first place team is going to be CrossFit East Nashville Proven. They have 2 of the women on the team, Taylor Williamson and Andrea Nisler, won the games last year. They have Tola, who is just an insanely good athlete all around. I think he did really well this year throughout the other stages individually. And then they have Tim Paulson, who has been a CrossFit Games athlete by himself. So I think this team is going to be hard to beat. After that, though, we have 3 more teams that I also think are really, really fantastic and could all push for the podium. So we have CrossFit Mayhem Independence. That's the Mayhem team that used to be second to Mayhem Freedom. Now they are the top Mayhem team. That Freedom has been retired. Rich Froning's retired, so that Freedom team is gone. Independence is now the top Mayhem team. So very well could end up second place in the podium. Then we have CrossFit OBA. That is full of a bunch of older, more experienced athletes who have some games appearances between all of them and have lots of years of CrossFitting. So I think we could see something big from OBA. And then I also have CrossFit Krypton, and that's Ben Smith's team. So I think those teams, those 3, will all be fighting for a podium spot behind CrossFit East Nashville Proven, who I believe will be easily in first. Then I have 6 more teams to fill out my top 10 no particular order. These are all teams I recognized and believe have some really great athletes on them, but I don't really know if these will be the 6 because like I said, there are a lot of teams that could be in this 6. So we've got CrossFit Move Fast Lift Heavy 247, CrossFit Pro 1 Montreal, 12 Labors CrossFit Lions, CrossFit Future The Brutes, 8th Day CrossFit, and TTT CrossFit Black. I don't have a ton to say about those teams other than I recognize them. I've seen some of them on Instagram doing some work together, and I think these teams all have a shot, but I think there are some other teams that do too. So we're gonna touch on Africa a little bit. I will be honest, I don't know as much about these athletes as I do the athletes we spoke about in North America East. And unfortunately, we likely won't see as much of these athletes because I don't know if the broadcast is going to be as extensive and expansive as we see from the ones run by CrossFit. But let's talk about the athletes anyway. So just one woman, one man, and one team are going, but I'm gonna put up a couple of people just to give you an idea of what names I think you should be keeping an eye on. So for the women, we have Christina Lividakis, I believe is how that's said, but it might be slightly off. She won quarterfinals and may be the strongest woman in this field. Michelle Bazinet, she has went to the games before out of Africa. She was farther down in quarterfinals. She wasn't in the top 3 in quarters, but that may be a result of a penalty and not being efficient at crossovers just yet. So I think she is someone still to keep an eye on at the semis. And then possibly Gemma Rader. So those are the 3 that I think will be near the top of the leaderboard at the end of the weekend. For the men, I have Keelan Henry and Darren Zernemer. Both were well ahead of the rest of the field in quarterfinals, but I do have one more man that I think we should keep an eye on, and that is Jason Smith. He was farther down in his region, but we've seen him at the games before. He has a lot of experience. I just wouldn't count him out. And then for the teams, this is just straight from the quarterfinals because I don't have a lot of information on these teams, but CrossFit FBDV Mayhem Africa was the top place finisher, and they're a Mayhem team. And we've talked about Mayhem already here. If you're familiar with CrossFit, you know Mayhem. Rich Froning, the most decorated CrossFit athlete of all time, runs that program. So I think you can't count Mayhem's out usually. If Mayhem has a major team that has their name on it, I think that's a serious team. I think the Mayhem team is the one that's going to qualify, but there were 2 other teams that were fairly close to them in quarterfinals, and that is Cape CrossFit Wolfpack that came in 2nd in quarters, and CrossFit Tiger Valley Synergy. They came in 3rd. And then there was a big fall off after that for the rest of the teams. So I think those are the big teams that we have to keep an eye on, but I think Mayhem Africa will be the one going to the games out of Africa. So that's your preview of the first weekend of semifinals. I am so excited to watch as much of it as I possibly can. Let me know what your predictions are below and what you're excited to see at semifinals. I am just super pumped for more CrossFit coverage and to see all these athletes take the floor and get a preview of what the games are going to be like. So let me know your thoughts below. I appreciate you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.